I think like what we learned is that, I mean, you're never going to be ready to have kids. Ever.
So true.
You know, because there's so many things. I mean, you could read all the books,
Yep.
you could soak up all the wisdom, and then you have a kid that could defy everything that you read, everything that you have accumulated from your own parents and the things that you think you're going to enact.
Welcome to the Skilled Dad Podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story, and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the Skilled Dad. Hey guys, welcome to the Skilled Dad Podcast. My name is Zach Reeser, I'm your host, and today I'm joined with my friend, Zach McCann.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm curious if anybody's going to hear the cicadas in the background.
Maybe so.
Because it is
or will they
nice...
be able to distinguish our voices since we're both named Zach?
Now, that's the question. Somebody's going to have to tell us if you know who's who. This is the Zach Attack episode.
Yep. I'm Zach McCann, and you are Zach Reeser.
Reeser.
There we go.
That's right.
You can recognize my voice by the clogged up sinuses. So.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's right. Zach, if you wouldn't mind, tell everybody about yourself. You can kind of take that wherever you want. I know some of your story. You've got an awesome story.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot to pick from, but tell us about your family, any of your background you want to share, and just
sure.
Who's Zach?
Yeah, so I was born in Tacoma, Washington, and then my parents moved when I was about 3 to Louisiana, and I've grown up in the Deep South pretty much my whole life.
In the bayou? Were you down in the bayou?
I was way down there, yeah. Crawfish, all that kind of stuff. Always kind of felt like a fish out of water, didn't really connect with the Cajun culture, but did love the food. I grew up a pastor's kid. So my dad planted a church in 2000 on Super Bowl Sunday, which was a really bad mistake, on Super Bowl Sunday. But
good attendance.
Exactly.
Probably.
No, it was terrible actually. I grew up there, and our whole family was kind of invested in church life, planting a church, that kind of whole world, and for about 10 years, the church didn't really go anywhere, and then about year 10, it kind of exploded, and then we launched different campuses and stuff. But in that time, I think it was 2000 and maybe 2002,
okay. This
14-year-old girl walks in, and no, she's 12 at the time. I'm 14. And my dad had just started the church, and I was a musician, so I'm playing bass at the time, and I see this girl, and I don't know what it was, but I told my dad, I said, I don't know who that is, but I'm gonna marry her. And he's like, you're insane. And long story short, almost 10 years later, I married her. So
wow.
Yeah, she became my wife, and we've got 6 kids together. 6. So 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, and 3. So 4 boys, 2 girls.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, man.
You're a busy man.
And we've got a good spectrum of like the one going into preteens, dealing with all kinds of stuff, and then we're still on the other end of a 3-year-old who, is just full of energy and crazy.
So you've got all sorts of tricks up your sleeve then. Going into like the teen world.
Absolutely.
And then the diaper world.
Yeah. Well, thank God we're out of diapers now.
Yeah, that's nice.
So that happened probably maybe 9 months ago, and it's been life-changing.
Liberating.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So short side of the story though is so we're in Louisiana. We end up helping my dad plant different churches, and we're kind of doing it as a family. And about year 3 of us leading this church, there was just something in me that just it just wasn't really alive. Mm-hmm. I knew that what I was doing, it was a good thing. People's lives were changing, but there was something shifting in my own soul. I wasn't the husband that I wanted to be. I wasn't the father that I wanted to be. I was becoming really a shell of a person. And I would later learn that I was just burnt out, of years and years and years of building and planting churches and, staying up late and doing the extra work and not resting well or any of those things. And through a series of circumstances, we decided that it would be best for us to kind of move on and move to Nashville and start a business. And I started a production company, which is another crazy story in and of itself. We moved to Franklin with $5,000 in our pocket. Ooh. With 6 kids.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Williamson County, with the most expensive place to live in this area. But God just really opened up doors, and we've been here for almost 2 years, and it's worked. So awesome. Yeah, it's crazy.
There's a bit of a shift there from planting churches. Yep. Maybe not as big of a shift, because planting a church, there's so much that goes into it.
Yep.
Right? But then going and starting an AV production company, there's some differences there. So how did you get into the AV element?
Yeah, so I've always, like I said in the beginning, I've always kind of been a creative. I guess that's why I felt like a fish out of water in Louisiana. In Louisiana, the run of the mill was you fish, you hunt, you watch football, you drink beer. Like, that was the thing. Yeah. And I'm this kind of kid that's sitting in the background, reading Narnia and wanting to figure out how to edit videos. And I've always kind of had that desire to want to pursue those things. Christian film has always just drove me absolutely insane. And just a desire to want to make better art. So I've kind of been a part of that. I started, working in the film world when I was about 19. And even planting churches and doing that stuff, I was still in it. I did a lot of freelance and contract work and stuff like that. And I think I finally got to a point where it was kind of like, I knew that's what I was supposed to do. It was just a scary place to land because, a lot of artists have these wild dreams, but they're also starving. So
sure.
I'm like, I got 6 kids. I can't afford to go do that. But yeah, we took the leap, and here we are, and it's worked out so far. So
that's awesome. Well, welcome to Nashville.
It's been amazing.
2 years later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so with the 6 kiddos, you were a fairly young dad then.
Yeah. So my wife. So I was 21 and she was 20 when we got married. Yeah. And then we had our first. So it would have been. She got pregnant within 3 months of us being married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Waste no time.
Yeah, it wasn't really necessarily the plan, but that's kind of how it happened.
Right.
And so, yeah, a very young dad, young parents who were basically thrown into this world of, you tell yourself that you're going to do all these things different when you're a parent. Yeah. And you're going to, have all these amazing kind of routines with your kids, and then you get thrown into the throes of it, of a child screaming at 2 a.m. and things going on, and, you're just trying to figure it out. So
best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Absolutely. I love that book. So yeah, there we are. And then definitely trying to figure it out, definitely trying to survive. And then I guess 18 months later, we thought we would just do it again. And then it just kept happening. So.
Isn't it amazing? I think this is actually a good thing to hang on to for a minute, because I've had a lot of conversations. And I ask myself this every time. So we just had our third. You go through, I call it the zombie zone, where your sleep patterns are disrupted. You're figuring out the new rhythms. And then somehow it magically kind of goes away, and you're like, oh, we should do that again.
Yeah.
In your case, that happened 5 additional times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
it's just kind of amazing. You go through, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, let's go through that one again.
Yeah. Well, I think like what I've learned now, kind of in hindsight, is that like, I think the hard stuff that you deal with being a parent is overwhelmed by like this incredible human that is developing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you get to see these characteristics and these traits that they take on. You get to see them, you know, enact compassion towards their brother or their sister, or, you know, it's just those little nuances that you begin to pick up on, and you're like, yeah, it's hard to do this, but it's so worth it because you see it happening over and over, and you see this incredible human being kind of developing. And, it really is an amazing feeling. So I think that's why we ended up doing it again. You know?
Yeah, well said. I mean, the first time it took me. I don't know about everyone else, but for me, it took like the snap. It was like 6 months. Yeah, I think some of that's because there was more going on just with the facial recognitions and the way that he interacted. That it really clicked for me. I was like, holy smokes! Yeah, there's a little man right here. Totally. And I'm responsible for him. And just a deeper connection to what you're saying is like, this is a little person. Yeah. Right? To now go and help be there for and mold and am I ready for this? Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing that we learned early on was that, you know, we got this question even in pastoring a lot of like, you know, we got married young. We had kids young. Like, what made you decide? How did you know that you were ready? And the truth was, it's like we didn't. Yeah. It was more of, you know, falling in love and then kind of wanting a family. And I think there was also somewhat in hindsight of going, you know, I think it would be really cool to have our youngest out of our house and us still be in our 40s. You know. Yeah. And I say so that was some of the motivation, but I think like. What we learned is that, I mean, you're never going to be ready to have kids. Ever. So true. You know, because there's so many things. I mean, you could read all the books. Yep. You could soak up all the wisdom. And then you have a kid that could defy everything that you read, everything that you have accumulated from your own parents and the things that you think you're going to enact. Yep. And, you know, like for our oldest, when he was first born, I mean, for probably a year and a half, almost 2 years, he would every night would just scream for hours. Was your oldest, you said? Yeah, my oldest. Yeah, just scream. And there was many nights where it would be, you know, me falling asleep in a rocking chair after my wife had just been so drained. She's like, I can't do it anymore. Take the human, you know? Right. And it's me in a recliner rocking it. But we end up learning like later on, like he had stomach issues, you know, but like as new parents, you don't know that. So there's like all these like unexpected things that happen within parenting that you could never be prepared for. But I think the thing that we learned is, man, we grew up so fast. And there was like a level of maturity that also comes when raising kids. Like it forces you, the areas of your life when you're like, oh, I got a few years before I have to mature or grow up in that area. Right. And then somebody gives you a human and they're like, well, they're going to sleep with you. They're going to scream. They're going to keep you up. Yep. But then also you're going to fall deeply in love with this person. There's something like in your soul that begins to wake up and it's like, all right, I've got to focus on this area, or I've got to do better at this, or I've got to figure out why I think this way and why I haven't overcome this yet, because that person is going to be watching me, emulating me. It starts to shed light on the chinks in the Absolutely. Armor. Like the areas of where we're just not that good at. 100%. Every day I'm kind of reminded by that, my own, but it's also a great mirror, kind of reflecting pool. Yeah. When you start to see some of those things pop up, you know, that you're like, don't do that. Yeah. And then either yourself, your friend, or your wife who says, hey, you do that. Yeah, you know? Absolutely. It's like incredibly humbling, and also just like, okay, how do we make the choice? Because we have to make a choice to step into that maturity. Yeah. Or you choose not to, right? And it can go a different direction. Yeah. When I find the ones that you end up being the most frustrated with are the ones that are usually most like you. That's so true. My daughter and I love her. I know she loves me, except for the day she looks at me and said, Dad, you're not my friend today. Yeah. I'm like, that actually is ripping out my soul. But you know what? Okay, that's fine, because we're gonna have that headbutt. But yeah, that's totally. So true. Yeah, totally. So like between on the topic of differences, so I've got 3 kiddos. I can tell the difference between the personalities of 2. My young son is too young to know anything about yet, but have you seen like a big difference in between all of your kids? So I'm thinking for somebody that's out there that has 6 kids or is maybe at the beginning stages, but they plan to have more kids.
Sure.
Even kind of prepping like, hey, from your story, what have you seen in the differences of your kids?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely all different.
Yeah.
You know, they have their own individual personalities, their own ways of viewing and looking at the world. But we have noticed, like, so my oldest and my 5th son, though they're different personalities, they're also very similar. Mm-hmm. So they're very much like my wife, very structured, organized. They think very linear. Like this is the way that they both have a very high like justice sense. Like so, if a sibling, like my oldest, if a sibling is getting a consequence for something and they feel it's unjust, my oldest is going to butt in and say, "This is unjust, and I'm going to fight for you," type thing. But then I look at my 2nd son and my 4th son, who are literally carbon copies of me, highly creative, highly emotional, can make decisions quickly, but then also they have this adventurous side, so that leads them to doing things that, may terrify us or as parents. But I think I've learned that even though you have all of those things, I think there is one common denominator that we've learned as a family that works with all of them, and that is giving them a safe space to be heard. And even if what they're saying may be hard for us to hear, like validating like, hey, I'm so sorry that you felt like I was angry or that I was frustrated with you or that I flew off the handle. I hear you saying that. I can apologize, and offering like that empathy to all of them. And I feel like that's a common denominator that kind of spreads through, regardless of the creative one, the structured one, however their personalities work. Like we've found that giving them a space to be heard, understood, talk through things, or hey, if you're angry at me, like just tell me. I'm angry. I'm frustrated that you did this, and this, and like giving them that space. Because my parents were great, but I didn't grow up in that space of, it was more like, this is what you're going to do. Well, why am I going to do that? Well, because I said you're going to do it.
Right.
Instead of, hey, let me hear you out. Let's kind of talk through this. And empathizing kind of with where they're at. Yeah.
And the word why.
Yeah.
I mean, even as adults, if someone's kind of delivering, hey, go do this, but we don't understand what the why is, it makes it a lot more difficult. Like, you're going to go do it depending on what the situation is, but understanding the why helps that ownership and also offers the opportunity to actually, like, talk through if there's something underneath.
Yeah.
Right? So even from a business perspective and a team perspective, if you've got an initiative, hey, here's the why.
Yeah.
So the team understands, can ideate off of it, can get ownership of it. But if we don't deliver that well, and I've done that well and I've done that horribly.
Oh, absolutely.
Both in the business realm and in the home realm.
Yeah.
But that system of creating that safe place, I mean, it sounds like that's a system that you've got.
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So let me give you a practical example. This was literally 2 days ago. Okay. So every kid in our home, when you have 6 kids, if they don't have some type of responsibility, like your home's just going to be destroyed. Like you have to have, all right, hey, so we kind of have like these rotating, chores that they might do throughout the week to, and it's basic stuff. Make sure your room is clean. 1 week, some kid the older will wash dishes or, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So they have these things. Well, sometimes during the summer you travel, you go different places and you kind of get out of your routine. And I got home late one evening and I had a long day. I had one of those hard days at work, where you had some conversations that were not necessarily easy to have.
Right.
And I get home, and my kids' bikes are all over the yard. I can see they're playing with friends. They're all over the neighborhood. And then I walk into the house, and it's just, their stuff's everywhere. Nobody's done their stuff. And we usually have a rule, like, you can't go out and play until you've finished your stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I've already had a hard day. Come into the home. My wife is still working upstairs because she works remotely. Mm-hmm. So she's on, like, some video, and I am just livid, just frustrated. So after she's done, we call this family meeting, and both my wife and I are kind of stressed, like the house is messed up, and we lay into them. Like, just lay into them. Yeah. Like, we told you, and we were both frustrated, we were both angry. And the further that the conversation went on, like, I could literally see the countenance of each one. At first, it was kind of like, all right, we got to get our stuff done. But then I pushed it even further of like, you guys keep doing this, and like, I'm really just laying into them, and I can see them like just shrinking into the couches.
Yeah.
And like, that look when somebody's like full of shame, like I'm terrible. And then my daughter literally looks at me and she's like, "Am I a bad kid?" And I'm just like, ugh. But at that time, I was trying to hold my ground. Like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, and I'm just like, no, you're not a bad kid.
Yeah.
And so we end the thing, and I'm like, all right, y'all go do your stuff. And my wife and I go on a walk. And so we're on a walk, and I don't know, it was just like, I was like, man, did you notice that? Did you notice that, like, they just shrunk into the couches? Like, you could tell that it wasn't a safe space. They felt like shame. One girl's like, my daughter, am I a bad kid? And, other kids are just like, they're going to do their chores, but it's just like silent. They're all like, parents hate us right now. And so we go on a walk, we talk through it, and I just realized, I'm like, we're going to have to go in there and create a safe space by simply apologizing and saying, hey, you guys didn't do your responsibilities, but the environment that we just created was not okay. Like, just because I was angry or frustrated, it does not give me the right to treat you guys that way. And so we walked in, we apologized, we told them those things. And then we went out in our garage and we played air hockey. And you could literally see, like, everybody's countenance lift up. Us going to each individual one, like, man, I love you. You're a great kid. Thank you so much for getting your stuff done. And it immediately, like, changed the atmosphere of the home. Like, they weren't slumping on the couch anymore. It was like, okay, this is great. We can enjoy the rest of the night. And I just noticed, like, in that moment, like, that was the safe space of like, hey, I'm going to be human. I'm going to have moments where you're not doing your stuff. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to, whatever.
Right.
But being able to come back around and going, I was wrong.
Yeah. I
blew it. There was no reason for me to talk to you the way that I did.
Yeah.
And that immediately creates that space. And then I asked each one of them, like, if you're mad at me, I need you to if you need to say anything to me in the words that I used, if it hurt you in any kind of way. And it just kind of changed. So I think that's like a practical example. And it's difficult because it's so time consuming, because, I did have two of them come to me that were frustrated, and that ends up being like another 15-minute conversation of me having to listen and, divulging their frustration and their anger and like hearing that out. Like, that's the hard stuff. You end up going to bed late and you're exhausted, but
well, that's emotionally wearing.
Oh yeah.
But there's something in there that you said too with the daughter that honed in on the, am I a bad kid?
Yeah.
And there's a pretty big difference in being angry at actions versus at the character of a person.
Absolutely.
And again, not necessarily to tie in workspace with home space, but it's human space.
Yeah.
If you attack a person because of frustration that could be boiled over from a variety of things, and that's a tipping point, and it comes out. It can leave someone wondering, is it me as a person? Is it the actions? Actions, like, we can go and correct. Person, that's deeper.
Absolutely.
There's much more to that, especially when it comes to our kids. It's like, here's the actions that happened, and so you going back and showing them the other side of that picture.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of help mitigate that. One question that, we may not have the answer to it, but what is that balance between kind of the discipline element and saying, hey, you have responsibility with these chores.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do them.
Mm-hmm.
Even in an environment where I'm a little, heated or something like that, to then play air hockey, just with that example. And
Sure.
Does that alleviate or kind of take away from what we were trying to get across with the responsibility of the chores?
Sure.
Like, is there,
yeah, so
balance there?
So let me I left some of it out. Like, so there were 2 of them that we end up realizing in there that were doing their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, their stuff was done. And there were 4 of them that were just kind of not doing it.
Okay.
And so those 4 did get consequences.
Yeah.
And they did, and we stuck to that. But at the same time, it was still that space of, you got a consequence because you didn't do what you were asked of. You failed at your responsibility. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, I still created an environment that you felt unsafe in, so I need to make that right. But I'm also sticking to my ground in the sense of, I might have been frustrated and I should have handled that differently. Mm-hmm. But there are still consequences because you didn't do, what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard when you screw up, though. Because
what do you mean?
Well, it's hard to hold to that consequence when you blow it, because and for me it is, I guess, there's that empathetic side of like, man, I was just a jerk, so.
Yeah, I a horrible dad?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, so all right, buddy, we're going to get off the hook this time, but next time, so yeah, sometimes it's difficult to stick to that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really good clarification, though, because it wasn't like, we're just using this example,
yeah,
because it's most recent, but it wasn't a time where it's like, okay, we're upset, long day, you guys didn't do what you're going to do, and we're going to kind of lay into you. And then we apologize because we feel bad, so everybody's off the hook.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an important factor.
Sure.
Hey, we're apologizing for our response and reaction.
100%.
So that they can see that, okay, both my character's fine, like, that response, I can learn how to have humility and apologize and come back. I still have consequences for not doing it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's key, and I'm glad you kind of pointed that out. We've got a similar thing that my son, who's now 6, do you guys do like allowance or commission structure?
Yeah, so we do like the green light cards. I don't know if you've heard of those.
Oh, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's like a debit card for kids. It works on an app. And so if they do their chores, they have it's like, oh, you can earn 50 cents for doing this or $1 for doing this. And then by Friday, the parents have checked off each one to see if they've done them.
Interesting.
And so there's like a cap, like it's like, okay, you can make $5 this week or whatever, that
was called green light card?
Yeah, green light. And so, but it's cool because sometimes they hit the $5.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, well, you had the option to make $5, but you only made $1 this week because you didn't do your stuff. So I think it is a side of, one of the phrases in our house constantly is like, hey, you can do hard stuff. Because we hear that, it's just so hard to do the dishes, and it's so it's difficult, and it's like, well, we can do hard things, because I think there's that side of it where I was a kid that grew up, and I mean, my mom was amazing, but she did everything for us, and so I had to learn that, when I got into college age, where it was like, oh shoot, I have to actually make my bed and make my own food, and
it gets nasty.
What is this?
Where's the dishes?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't they just go away?
Exactly.
Yeah, so we run a commission structure in our household.
Okay.
So my son has chores that are just, these are your responsibility.
And you don't get paid.
You don't get paid on
Yeah,
these.
we have the same. Yeah.
So this is your job.
Yep.
And he's actually gotten this kid used to wake up at 6 a.m, go downstairs, turn on some music, and he would, I don't know, he didn't get this from me, but I'd walk down like, what are you doing, man? It's like, I'm journaling.
Oh,
but
wow.
He was coloring. I don't know. I don't know where he got that from. Maybe it was school or something. But he had a goal. So he has other things he can do to get commission. And he had a goal to buy this Super Mario Lego expansion element. Have you seen this Super Mario Lego?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a Bluetooth.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But it was $25. And so he was just on point every week, knocking everything out, working really well towards it. And then one week, he said this, and I was just like, oh, this would be interesting. He said, I think I'm going to take the day off. I'm like, oh, okay. Let him roll with it, right?
Yeah.
At the end of that week, he was only a few bucks short already, but now he was like $2 short. And you can just kind of see that kind of, lack of a better term, pain of, oh, had I done this,
yeah, I would have hit it.
The time it would have taken, I would have hit it. So the next week, we had some babysitters over. My wife and I were out together, and we get home, and the babysitter says, I don't know, like, what you guys put in place for your son, but we need to figure out how to get my sister to do that. Because he had gotten the vacuum and vacuumed the whole house, just like gone after it to get his commission to finally, put the nail in the coffin on that.
Nice.
The other side of that, though, is once he got what he had earned, the commission stuff kind of rolled away. Mm-hmm. So he hadn't asked for like any other toys because he was going after that one thing, which is kind of a cool idea. Is, hey, give him a goal, that one specific thing to go after, and you actually get less asking for other stuff.
Yeah.
But once he got it, probably like a lot of us,
he was done.
Right? And so we're working on establishing that new goal for him.
Yeah.
But the hard stuff, or just kind of the motivation, and then, what the allowance and commission structures look like in a house.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing we like about the green light card is like you can actually, so they have set chores that they do, they don't get paid for. And all the stuff that they do get paid for it's different things, but it's like, it's the extra stuff.
Interesting.
But then there's also been times like where we've had weeks where they've just slacked on different things, and like we pause it. Like, hey, like at a real job, you would have been fired if you didn't, if you would have just not done your responsibilities. Yeah. So, there's different, there's different things there. I think we're still figuring it out. Yeah. But
that's a good system. I'll look at the green light card. We have no sponsorship affiliation
sounds like
with green light, but you know what? Yeah. Hey, if it's good stuff and as dads we can use it,
absolutely.
That's what this show's about.
Yeah.
It's helping people find cool things. I've not heard of it, so I'm going to go look at it. I think that's
awesome.
Great. Well, with the time that we've got left, I'm curious in your journey. And you've done a lot of things. I know a little bit more of your story, and you've done some really, really cool things. But as a dad, a younger dad, and having a spread from 13 to from right?
Yeah, 12 to 3.
Or 12 to 3.
Yeah.
Not to wish. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're
not
good.
Wishing time away. Put you in the teen world already.
Yeah.
From 12 to 3. What are like 3 takeaways that you would say, hey, to a younger dad or someone that's kind of in that same zone, just like how would you encourage them, or what are some things that you throw at them and say, look, if I had known this would have been awesome?
Yeah. Well, I think, looking at it now and kind of seeing, we're not really in the teen space, we're in the preteen, so I can't speak too much to that, but I would say we've learned some of the phases that we have now with our kids. And if I were to break it into 3 phases, the first phase would have been that 0 to probably 3 almost. And as a dad, you're just going to be absolutely exhausted. Mainly physically. You're going to be up. You're going to be chasing them around. And one of the things that I learned to do, and I wish I didn't learn this maybe until like kid 4, but I remember I would have to pull up into the driveway, and I started doing this thing where I'm like, all right, I need about 15 to 20 minutes before I get out of the car. And I would just play some music. I would literally calm myself down, like, because I came from a busy, fast-paced structure, and then I'm coming home to like a wife that is like, please take this child, and I need you to be available and help. And when we first had the 1 or 2, I would come in and I'm like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I need a break, and so I had to give myself about 15 or 20 minutes to just like sit in the car, like, all right, I got to prepare myself to go in there. She's going to need some help. And I want to be, I need to reset. I need to get out of work mode, get into dad mode. Sometimes I was just sitting in quiet and thinking about nothing. Sometimes it was listening to a podcast or, finishing out a song or whatever it might be.
Quick question on that. So you were getting home from work. Have you all, over the last year, obviously it's been a different dynamic for a lot of different people.
Absolutely.
Where your drive home is opening the door and walking into it.
Yeah, you're right.
So for did you work remote at all?
I did. I was at home.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a drive home, what did you do? Yeah.
So, there was a few things. One, I think it's just communication with your wife, and your spouse, and saying, hey, I need 15 minutes, in a room somewhere, by myself. There were other times where, honestly, like, I'd just pop on some headphones and silence the noise for a minute and make sure they were good, and, or go on a 10-minute walk. I think it was important to kind of, there has to be a moment where you're kind of like, recentering yourself and getting away from all the chaos and the noise. And I think all of us do that differently.
Yeah.
We all have different ways of doing that,
Yep.
So yeah, I think that I would say that's one of them. But just communication with your spouses, I think, is huge. Of like, hey, I'm tapped, I need 15, and I'll come back and give it my best after that.
Yeah. No, that's a good call out.
Yeah. And then I think that the second phase is like after you move out of that kind of baby, type stage is, I've always found it's probably one of the funnest for me. And my wife would probably disagree with this, but it was always one of the funnest for me because I felt like that was where, there's still this imagination and innocence that just runs wild in kids. And, so, having a big imagination myself, I felt like that was the time where you could really connect with them on a different level, where you could activate things of like, man, let's create worlds and let's go make games and let's play hide and seek and let's do those things. Like, that I think that's the time where it's like, as much as you can, like, enjoy that phase, because that's the phase when you're the hero. They're coming to you. They still, like, it doesn't matter what friends got coming over. They still would rather connect with you. And I think I learned in that time, it's like, man, don't waste that. Like, come play hide and seek with me. Come play Ninja Turtles with me. Whatever it might be, Power Rangers or whatever it was. And I think there was a sense of like being able to just get lost in those moments with them that was so, cool.
Yeah.
And then you move to that third phase now where you got preteens. It's a different, you're not as physically exhausted, you're more emotionally exhausted. Because they start to get to a place where they have their own opinions. They have their own thoughts. They have their own... and I think what I've tried to learn, I haven't done this perfectly, but I think what I'm trying to learn in that phase now is, I keep telling myself this, like, I don't want to stifle their thoughts and their thinking, because I think the tendency of a parent sometimes is to come in as, like, when you have a child that's trying to figure out the world, we have this tendency to go, no, here's how it is. And, like, instead of me giving them all the answers, I think I've learned with my oldest, like, to ask better questions. Well, what do you think about that? And then he'll give me his thought and be like, well, okay, well, I noticed this, this, and this, and well, what do you think about that? And it starts developing, like, and he can come back to me sometimes and go, okay, I was wrong now that I've thought about it.
Critical thinking skills.
He arrives on it on his own rather than going, well, I got to think this way because Dad said.
Yeah. That's huge. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that those are probably those kind of phases, the phases of being physically exhausted, and then you come to that second one where it's like, just soak it up as much as you can. Imagination is running wild. Enjoy it. And then the other side is, yeah, you're teaching them how to think. You're teaching them how to navigate the world, and try not to stifle them as much as you can, because I want them to think critically and be able to solve problems instead of like coming to me for an answer for everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's going to help equip them when you're not there.
Absolutely.
Or your wife's not there.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. You said first, okay, just to recap, phase 1, kind of that 0 to 3 stage.
Yep.
Phase 2, that 4 to, what would you say, 11?
Yeah, it's probably like, about, we're noticing, like with our second, he's about to turn 11.
Okay.
And he's getting into that space where my 12-year-old is.
Okay.
So yeah, 4 to probably like 10. And then usually the older side of 10 approaching 11 is where, at least we've noticed it, is where that shift starts to take place. It's like, nah, I want to pick my clothes now.
Yeah.
You know, and
let me do it.
No, I don't want that. Like, you know.
So my 3-year-old jumped straight to that phase, apparently.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you may have laid this out for me. I chose this. Luckily, she gets things that actually like match, which is good.
I think that's just girls, because my 3-year-old is the same.
Okay.
Yeah, we will dress her for daycare, and then she will go back upstairs, come back down, and she's in something completely different. So, yeah.
I love it. It's keeps you froggy, as I say.
Yeah.
Man, one thing that you said, which is always a great reminder for me, maybe it'll be a great reminder for anybody that's listening, but Craig Rochelle did a talk on training versus trying.
Yeah.
And as you said, you're trying to do this, I'm going to throw that out at you, which is like, hey, we're constantly training. You're training to be better at this thing.
Absolutely.
Because there's such a cool mind shift with I'm trying, which almost, it just conjures up something different than saying, you know what, I'm training.
Absolutely.
So when you're training, you're not perfect. You're getting better. It's a forward movement versus kind of a passive thing. It's like, hey, we're training towards this thing. So, hey, as dads, we're all training.
Absolutely.
To get better. And having training partners like friends, mentors, people around us, it's going to help us learn those things that we can continue to get better at. But
yeah, absolutely.
But man, I appreciate you jumping on here with me and
it was fun
starting the convo.
Absolutely.
And maybe sometime we'll get some more of your story. But some big takeaways on this one. I'm going to check out the green light card.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Because that sounds like a good way.
It's awesome
to do the convention structures. But just some takeaways that I had from the conversation that really stood out being, one, hey, we all have tipping points at some point. We're working during the day. We have a lot of things going on. We're humans.
Yeah.
And how we sometimes have that tipping point and it comes out in not so great a way with our kids.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Even when we say it's never going to happen again, it's probably going to happen again.
Yeah, you can't avoid it.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But you also shouldn't avoid doing what you guys did. I think that's really good, to follow up and call out, like, if there was a misstep. Call out if, like, hey, this was a little over the top.
Yep.
And be able to show what it is to, apologize, to also show some of that emotional intelligence side of things, while still enacting the consequences, but being able to come back and say, hey, I as a parent goofed.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're modeling that. So I think that's really, really big. I like the system that you guys have in place with the chores and having responsibilities. And you said if everybody needs a role, otherwise the house is going to be a mess.
Oh, it's chaos, yeah.
You have bikes in the yard, which in your case might look like Sturgis because you have so many bikes rolling.
Yeah. And then the HOA is like really pissed off at us. You
start getting letters.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can avoid all those things by putting in some jobs. And my son loves his jobs.
Yep.
I say that, and then I also just share the story on
the day off.
The day off.
Yeah.
And after getting his toy,
he learned the secret of a day off.
That's right. And then the last thing, which I think is just a powerful thing to remember, is that when we tell the kid what to do, maybe without the why, or just like, here's the thing, and we don't allow for that critical thinking to occur, we're not necessarily helping equip them. So being able to capture those moments and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah. Well, to use your language, you're not training them to think.
Right. There you go.
You know? Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
Well done.
Awesome, man.
Well, hey, everybody listening, thank you for tuning in and just joining Zach and Zach on this conversation. And we hope you had some great takeaways that you can take and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the skilled dad. If you have feedback, questions, please let us know. You can go to theskilleddad.com, find more information, and find out where to contact us there. If you're listening to this podcast and you've made it to the end and you've got somebody that comes to mind that you think could benefit from this conversation, please share it with them. Please have them join in. Our goal is to help dads learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can equip the next generation for success. We look forward to talking with you next time in our next conversation. Until then, go out, equip yourself, and join in the fun. You're listening to The Skilled Dad.